Do you remember Days of Our Lives? For decades, it mirrored time itself, capturing decades of romance and tragedy. But behind the scenes, the cast's real lives took far darker turns. From explosive engagement rumors to a heartbreaking homeless story, their transformations are more shocking than any plot twist Salem ever dared to tell. Deidre Hall as Marlena Evans. Marlena Evans, the calm, intellectual psychiatrist in Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Deidre Hall. At 29 years old, she embodied a woman whose authority came from emotional restraint and moral certainty, becoming a stabilizing force inside the chaos of Salem. That contrast would mirror Hall's own life in ways no one expected. Born on October 31, 1947, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Deidre Hall was the daughter of John Hall and Jeannie Hall, growing up in a household that valued discipline, education, and emotional control. Raised later in Lake Worth, Florida, she and her twin sister Andrea learned early that stability did not mean ease. Her parents encouraged academic success, pushing her toward psychology, yet that pressure created inner conflict rather than certainty. Even as she pursued education, the pull between intellectual security and artistic risk weighed heavily on her, shaping a quiet but persistent emotional tension. Marriage brought hope, but also repeated loss. Hall married William Hudson, then Keith Barber, followed by Michael Dubelko, and later Steve Somer, each relationship ending in divorce. The repeated collapse of marriages left emotional scars that compounded over time, creating a pattern of starting over just as trust was beginning to form. Love, for Hall, became something deeply desired yet painfully unstable. Her most devastating struggle was physical and deeply personal. Deidre Hall battled infertility for years, enduring emotional despair and medical disappointment that pushed her into periods of depression. The inability to conceive naturally became a source of profound grief, later revealed in Never Say Never, the Deidre Hall story. That pain existed alongside demanding work schedules and intense storylines, forcing her to perform emotional resilience while privately breaking. Today, Deidre Hall is 79 years old and continues to appear selectively in television, public events, and charitable advocacy while maintaining a more private life. Her estimated net worth of around $12 million reflects decades of uninterrupted work rather than fleeting fame. Drake Hogestyn as John Black. John Black, the guarded, haunted presence in Days of Our Lives, was played by Drake Hogestyn. At 33 years old, he portrayed a man defined by memory loss and emotional restraint, slowly becoming the emotional backbone of the series. That internal struggle resonated deeply with viewers. Born on September 29, 1953 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Drake Hogestyn was the son of William Hogestyn and Shug Hogestyn, raised in a working, disciplined household shaped by routine and expectation. His childhood revolved around achievement through structure, particularly sports. An injury ended that path abruptly, leaving behind confusion and emotional displacement. Losing his future so suddenly forced him into adulthood without a clear sense of who he was meant to be. Stability arrived through marriage. In 1986, Hogestyn married Victoria Post, and together they raised 4 children: Whitney, Alexandra, Rachel, and Ben. Family became his anchor, offering emotional grounding in a profession defined by instability. While his career demanded long hours and constant visibility, his marriage remained intact, as balancing fatherhood and daily production schedules required personal sacrifice. Illness arrived quietly and without mercy. In 2024, Drake Hogestyn was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a disease known for its speed and severity. He continued working as long as possible, filming episodes in advance while his health declined. His final performances carried an unintended weight, now understood in hindsight. Finally, he passed away on September 28, 2024, at the age of 70, at his home in Malibu, California, just one day before his 71st birthday. He died from pancreatic cancer, with his final episode airing shortly before his death due to advanced taping. His estimated net worth of around $2 million reflected a career built on consistency rather than excess. Kristian Alfonso as Hope Williams. Brady. Hope Williams Brady, the romantic rebel heart of Days of Our Lives, was played by Kristian Alfonso. At 20 years old, she portrayed a young woman shaped by defiance, loss, and fierce loyalty, instantly turning Hope into one of Salem's most emotional anchors. That contradiction followed both the character and the actress for decades. Born on September 5, 1963, in Brockton, Massachusetts, Kristian Alfonso was the daughter of Gino Alfonso and Joanne Alfonso, growing up in a disciplined, middle-class household. Her childhood revolved around figure skating, a dream fueled by relentless training and parental sacrifice. At just 13, a severe leg injury from a toboggan accident ended her Olympic ambitions overnight. The sudden loss shattered her identity, forcing a teenage girl to grieve a future she had already lived for. Marriage entered her life early and painfully. In 1987, she married Simon Macaulay, and the distance between his life abroad and her demanding career in Los Angeles slowly eroded the relationship. Their divorce in 1991 left emotional scars and the weight of raising a son while rebuilding stability. Years later, she married attorney Danny Dagenhurst, finding steadiness and emotional safety, a contrast to the uncertainty that had defined her earlier adult years. Her body, however, carried the memory of trauma. The skating injury never fully disappeared, leaving long-term physical strain that shaped her endurance on set during physically demanding years of production. Despite this, she continued working relentlessly, returning repeatedly to Days of Our Lives, and later balancing roles in Falcon Crest and Melrose Place. Now Kristian Alfonso is 63 years old and remains active through selective television appearances, Hallmark projects, and occasional returns to her iconic role. Her estimated net worth of around $5 million reflects decades of consistency rather than spectacle. Suzanne Rogers as Maggie Horton. Maggie Horton, the moral backbone of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Suzanne Rogers. At 30 years old, she embodied a woman defined by humility, resilience, and inner strength, grounding Salem in compassion rather than chaos. From the beginning, she carried a gravity that suggested suffering long before the audience knew why. Born on July 9, 1943, in Midland, Maryland, Suzanne Rogers was raised by parents who loved art but lived modestly, offering encouragement without protection from hardship. Drawn to dance from early childhood, she left home as a teenager to chase opportunity in New York City. Poverty followed her there, along with rejection and relentless competition. Years as a Radio City Rockette taught discipline, but also loneliness, shaping a performer who learned endurance before recognition ever arrived. Marriage did not bring permanence. Rogers married actor Sam Groom in 1980, but conflicting schedules and professional pressure fractured the relationship, leading to divorce just 2 years later. She never remarried and had no children, a quiet reality that deepened her sense of emotional self-reliance. Illness changed everything. In 1984, Suzanne Rogers was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, a rare neuromuscular disease that weakened her body, altered her appearance, and forced her away from the role she loved. Medication caused facial swelling and hair loss, stripping away the physical identity audiences recognized. Later in life, she faced another devastating diagnosis, stage 2 colorectal cancer in 2025, enduring treatment in silence before entering remission. In 2026, Suzanne Rogers is 83 years old and continues to appear selectively on Days of Our Lives, honored as the longest-running actor in American soap opera history. Her estimated net worth of around $3 million reflects endurance rather than excess. Susan Seaforth Hayes as Julie Olson Williams. Julie Olson Williams, the restless, rebellious heart of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Susan Seaforth Hayes. At 25 years old, she gave life to a young woman driven by impulse, desire, and emotional defiance, becoming one of Salem's most controversial figures. She was written to disturb, to fall, and to rise again in full view of the audience. Born on July 11, 1943, in Oakland, California, Susan Seaforth Hayes was the daughter of Harry Siebold, a serviceman sent overseas during World War II, and Elizabeth Harrower, an actress and screenwriter. Her father was absent for most of her earliest years, leaving her mother to raise her alone while moving constantly for work. That instability shaped Susan's childhood, filling it with uncertainty and emotional distance rather than routine. Love arrived through work. Susan married her Days of Our Lives co-star Bill Hayes in 1974, turning an on-screen romance into a real-life partnership that lasted half a century. Their marriage became legendary, admired for its devotion and warmth, but it was not untouched by pain. They had no children, and their life revolved around work, companionship, and each other. When Bill Hayes passed away in 2024, Susan was left carrying both a public legacy and a deeply private grief that could not be softened by applause. Illness did not define her body, but endurance defined her career. Over decades, she remained emotionally and physically present, continuing to work through the pressures of daytime television while balancing appearances on The Young and the Restless. Her longevity brought recognition, multiple Daytime Emmy nominations, and a Lifetime Achievement Award. Yet it also demanded constant reinvention. Today, Susan Seaforth Hayes is 83 years old and still appears regularly on Days of Our Lives, the only actress to span all 7 decades of the show. Her estimated net worth of around $5 million reflects a life sustained by consistency, not spectacle. Allison Sweeney as Sammy Brady. Sammy Brady, the volatile, impulsive force of Days of Our Lives, was played by Allison Sweeney. At 16 years old, she embodied a teenager ruled by obsession, jealousy, and fierce emotional extremes, reshaping Salem with chaos and intensity. Sammy was meant to be unforgettable, and Sweeney made her impossible to ignore. Born on September 19, 1976, in Los Angeles, California, Allison Sweeney was the daughter of Polly Sweeney and Stender Sweeney, growing up in a middle-class household shaped by early exposure to the industry. Acting began at the age of 5, long before emotional maturity could catch up with public attention. Balancing school, auditions, and professional expectations placed heavy pressure on her childhood, creating anxiety rooted in fame arriving before identity had fully formed. Marriage brought stability after years of scrutiny. In 2000, Allison married David Sanoff, a former police officer, building a life deliberately removed from Hollywood excess. Together, they raised 2 children, Benjamin and Megan, prioritizing privacy and routine over celebrity chaos. While her career remained public, her marriage became a guarded space, especially after years of invasive fan behavior and emotional stress tied to her character's notoriety. Her struggles were psychological rather than physical. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Sweeney endured relentless public commentary about her body, becoming a target during an era hostile to normalcy. The pressure left deep emotional scars, later revealed in her memoir, All the Days of My Life, So Far. In 2026, Allison Sweeney is 50 years old and remains active as an actress, producer, director, author, and Hallmark leading figure while continuing periodic returns to Days of Our Lives. Her estimated net worth of around $9 million reflects a career expanded beyond one role. Melissa Reeves as Jennifer Horton. Jennifer Horton, the gentle yet wounded heart of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Melissa Reeves. At 18 years old, she played a young woman defined by innocence, emotional vulnerability, and the slow loss of safety as adulthood arrived too early. It was a fragile armor that would be tested again and again. Born on March 14, 1967 in Eatontown, New Jersey, Melissa Reeves was the daughter of a radio disc jockey father who worked long hours and a mother who carried the weight of keeping the household steady. Raised in Red Bank, she grew up surrounded by music but little certainty, learning early how unpredictable creative lives could be. As a child, she dreamed of becoming a dancer, commuting alone to New York as a teenager for classes, absorbing pressure and independence long before she was emotionally prepared for it. Acting entered her life not as passion, but as survival. Marriage reshaped her priorities. Melissa married actor Scott Reeves in 1990, shortly after he underwent emergency brain surgery to remove an abscess, an early trauma that bonded them through fear rather than fantasy. Together, they built a family with 2 children, Emily and Lawrence, choosing stability over constant ambition. Her repeated departures from Days of Our Lives were not driven by career dissatisfaction, but by the need to protect family life from the consuming pace of daytime television. Controversy, rather than illness, marked her later career years. After decades on the show, Melissa faced public backlash over social media activity that conflicted with industry sentiment, resulting in her absence during the post-pandemic restart. Yet her work endured through earlier milestones, award-winning storylines opposite Matthew Ashford, and recognition including Daytime Emmy nominations and multiple Soap Opera Digest awards. Today, Melissa Reeves is 59 years old and continues to make selective appearances on Days of Our Lives, choosing presence without permanence. Her estimated net worth of around $9 million reflects decades of steady work rather than constant visibility. Josh Taylor as Roman Brady. Roman Brady, the steady lawman and moral anchor of Days of Our Lives, was played by Josh Taylor. At 34 years old, he portrayed a man built on duty, restraint, and quiet authority, offering stability in a town defined by emotional chaos. His strength lived in endurance. Born on September 25, 1943 in Princeton, Illinois, Josh Taylor was the son of George Gale Taylor, a respected football coach, and Ragnhild Rena Christensen Taylor, who died from pregnancy-related complications. Raised in a household shaped by discipline and loss, he learned structure early and grief even earlier. Athletics became his refuge, leading him to Dartmouth College and later to law school, a path chosen to honor stability rather than passion. Yet the weight of expectations followed him relentlessly. Marriage came in chapters rather than permanence. Josh married dancer Sandal Bergman, a relationship that eventually ended in divorce, followed years later by marriage to Lisa Tremblay in 1999. Together they raised 2 sons, Jason and Tristan, building a quieter family life away from the spotlight. His personal world contrasted sharply with the constancy audiences expected from Roman Brady, creating a divide between public familiarity and private complexity. Leaving law behind, Josh entered acting almost by accident, rising through roles on The Hogan Family and Beverly Hills, 90210 before returning to Salem as Roman Brady. His character's on-screen deaths and resurrections mirrored his own professional cycles, leaving, returning, and redefining purpose. Now, Josh Taylor is 83 years old and remains associated with Days of Our Lives as one of its most enduring figures. His estimated net worth of around $4 million reflects a life spent choosing consistency over spectacle. James Reynolds as Abe Carver. Abe Carver, the steady moral compass of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by James Reynolds. At 35 years old, he embodied a lawman defined by restraint, authority, and unshakable principle, giving Salem a sense of order when chaos ruled the town. Abe's strength was earned, deliberate, and deeply human. Born on August 10, 1946 in Oskaloosa, Kansas, James Reynolds was raised in a disciplined household shaped by duty and movement, the son of parents whose lives revolved around structure and service. His early years were marked by constant adjustment, learning to adapt before learning to dream. Football gave him purpose, but service hardened him, first through the Marines, then through battlefield reporting in Vietnam. Marriage arrived early and tested him. James married Laura Toffanetti in 1978, and they welcomed a son, Jed, the following year. The union, however, could not survive the strain of demanding careers and shifting priorities, ending in divorce in 1984. A year later, he married Lissa Lang, building a quieter, steadier life away from public spectacle, choosing continuity over drama. So Reynolds carried the weight of leadership on screen for decades, stepping briefly into prime time with Generations before returning to Salem, promoted within the story as Chief of Police. His work on Days of Our Lives and The Incredible Hulk reflected a career built on credibility rather than flash, culminating in a daytime Emmy win that acknowledged decades of quiet authority. Today, James Reynolds is 80 years old and remains a respected presence tied to Days of Our Lives, his legacy rooted in consistency and trust. His estimated net worth of around $5 million reflects longevity more than excess. What lingers is a man shaped by service, loss, and responsibility. Arianne Zucker as Nicole Walker. Nicole Walker, the volatile, wounded survivor of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Arianne Zucker. At 24 years old, she brought to life a woman ruled by desire, guilt, and relentless self-sabotage, turning Nicole into one of Salem's most polarizing figures. The character's beauty exposed her. Born on June 3, 1974, in Northridge, California, Arianne Zucker grew up in Chatsworth as the daughter of Barry Zucker, a plumber, and Barbara Zucker, a laboratory technologist. Raised in a modest, mixed-faith household, she learned early that stability was built, not given. Modeling began at 16, demanding adult composure from a teenager still forming identity, and the constant scrutiny carved pressure into her formative years. Marriage unfolded under the same spotlight. In 2002, Arianne married co-star Kyle Lowder, and they welcomed a daughter, Isabella. The relationship fractured over time, ending in divorce in 2014 after years of separation and reconciliation. Later, love returned through shared history when she married Kristian in 2024, a union born from understanding rather than illusion, after years of public heartbreak. Her defining struggle was not physical, but institutional. Arianne's career became entangled in controversy when she filed a wrongful termination lawsuit tied to a sexual harassment complaint, a battle that followed her departure from Days of Our Lives. The fight reshaped her professional life, reframing years of work on Days and the resilience she showed across performances that earned industry recognition and sustained fan loyalty. In 2026, Arianne Zucker is 52 years old, navigating life beyond the role that once defined her, balancing family, advocacy, and selective work. Her estimated net worth of around $6 million reflects decades of acting and modeling rather than a single triumph. Lauren Koslow as Kate Roberts. Kate Roberts, the calculating, iron-willed survivor of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Lauren Koslow. At 43 years old, she played a woman forged by hunger for power, survival instincts, and a refusal to apologize for ambition. From the start, the character felt dangerous because she was believable. Born on March 9, 1953 in Boston, Massachusetts, Lauren Koslow grew up amid instability, the daughter of parents whose marriage collapsed early, forcing frequent moves and emotional dislocation. Childhood lacked routine and permanence, teaching her independence before comfort. She learned to adapt quickly, to read people, and to protect herself emotionally. That survival training quietly shaped the steel she later brought to the screen. Marriage offered steadiness where childhood had not. In 1987, Lauren married makeup artist Nikki Schillis, and together they raised 3 children. The relationship endured outside the glare of celebrity, grounded in privacy rather than spectacle. Yet pain lingered beneath the surface. Decades later, she revealed a long separation from her firstborn son Josh shortly after his birth. Lauren's career demanded emotional aggression, especially through Kate's wars with Sammy Brady and her volatile marriage to Victor Kiriakis. Her earlier work on The Bold and the Beautiful proved her range, but Days of Our Lives consumed her longevity, rewarding her with critical respect and industry recognition. Today, Lauren Koslow is 73 years old and remains an active presence on Days of Our Lives, still commanding scenes with quiet menace. Her estimated net worth of around $5 million reflects durability rather than excess. Galen Gering as Rafe Hernandez. Rafe Hernandez, the conflicted protector of Days of Our Lives, was portrayed by Galen Gering. At 37 years old, he played an FBI agent driven by duty, restraint, and quiet emotional fracture, standing between chaos and conscience. That tension made him real. Born on February 13, 1971, in Los Angeles, California, Galen Gering was raised by artist parents Galen Gering and Michelle de Oñate in a free-spirited, unstable household. The hippie lifestyle brought creativity but little security, and financial uncertainty shadowed his childhood. He leaned on art and imagination to survive inconsistency, growing especially close to his grandmother, another artist who gave him emotional grounding when structure was absent. Marriage became his anchor. In 2000, Galen married Jenna Hudlett, choosing partnership early and deliberately. Together they raised two sons, Dylan and Jensen, building the stability he never had growing up. Their life remained largely private, even when briefly exposed through reality television. Since then, Galen carried the pressure of being labeled beautiful before being taken seriously, named one of People's 50 most beautiful people while fighting to be respected for substance. His work on Passions and later Days of Our Lives required emotional restraint rather than spectacle, proving endurance through consistency instead of controversy. Today, Galen Gering is 55 years old and continues working steadily on Days of Our Lives, balancing acting with writing, filmmaking, and family life. His estimated net worth of around $4 million reflects longevity without excess. Time leaves its mark on everyone, but in Hollywood, every wrinkle tells a story. Some faces from Days of Our Lives carry their years with quiet grace, while others reveal just how unforgiving fame can be. So which transformations surprised you the most? Aging gracefully or changing in ways no one expected? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more untold stories from daytime television history.